There is a silent war unfolding within the minds and spirits of our society. Young and old, rich and poor, black and white. There's an advanced campaign for your soul, for your will, that has a scheduled and fitting place in the program for us all. Mind control is ubiquitous, and they have every demographic covered. Though there seems to be a certain demographic that is being severely targeted, more than others, mainly because there is more of them, and they will be the group that shapes the future. This demographic group is known as the millennials, the foundation of tomorrow. As being part of what would be known as Generation X, it is very easy for me to see the plague that has attached itself to the millennial group, a plague that has been maliciously fortified and re-engineered to bring this young group to a slow, crawling death. And we are going to analyze the development of this. We will look at the numerous designated groups and archetypes within this culturally created demographic. And of course, as always, we will dig into the history of culture creation and its methods of designing the future by destabilizing the youth through corruption and methodic media conditioning. From the creation of the teenager in the 50s with films like Rebel Without a Cause and the introduction of blue jeans, to the CIA-funded and designated hippie counterculture of the 60s and 70s, the androgynous new wave genre of the 80s, and more. All leading up to today, where they have finalized their plan and designed a generation of individuals programmed to self-destruct. There's a war on millennials, and it's time that this war is put into perspective. To begin, let's do a recap on what the roots of culture creation are and where the manipulation of society originates. For one of the earliest examples, we can start with Plato and his work, The Republic, where he describes a central power elite running a society by using trauma, symbolism, and dramatics in theater and music, similar to the bread and circuses of Rome, which could lead us right to the circus theatrics of the professional con man P.T. Barnum, who introduced culture creation through showmanship and hoaxes. And of course, that would lead us to the father of culture creation and propaganda, Edward Bernays, whom, with the guidance of his uncle Sigmund Freud, single-handedly changed society. Not only did he create public support for war, but he spearheaded marketing and advertisement, the fashion industry, and even introduced women to smoking cigarettes, when he decided it would be effective to hire non-smoking models to pretend they were smoking on street corners, as he took pictures of them and placed them in advertisement ads, inspiring thousands to then create a new, unheard of population of women smokers. This is a small example of culture creation, but it is the beginnings of a process that is far more developed and has advanced over decades to bring us where we are today. Making up for all the disturbed and empty trends we have witnessed over the years. Unfortunately, these trends become people's identities, and when these people form functioning groups, this group becomes what we know as a culture. The ideas of Freud and Bernays would be passed down and absorbed by European intellectuals and thinkers who would then form powerful think tanks that had backing from sources like the London elite, the American Jewish Committee, Ford, and Rockefeller foundations. These think tanks were the Frankfurt School, the Brookings Institute, and the Esalen Institute, to name a few. Under the direction and tutelage of the Tavistock Institute, Fabian Society, and the OSS, of course. though none of this could have been accomplished without the minds and influences of the elite agents Aldous Huxley, Timothy Leary, Alfred Kinsey, Gordon Wasson, Margaret Mead, and Gregory Bateson. Though many others play key roles, these individuals stood out in terms of the slow debilitation of an American society and cultures of the world. Okay, so we are familiar with the powers behind culture creation, and let's remember all forms of mind control, predictive programming, MK Ultra, lesser magic, all these concepts are mere sections within the broad spectrum of culture creation. It aims to create a transient and dualistic New World culture. In order to succeed in this, the elite powers must destroy two things. These are the God-ordained family unit and Christian faith. This is why it is very important to understand that all those who are agnostic, atheist, or non-believers in Christ are convenient agents for the New World agendas. How is this so? Well, these groups and schools of thought are promoted and accepted in the elite plans because they all pose threats to the order and design of the Most High God. And they're aware of this. This cannot be disputed. Let's look at some simple ways these think tanks and financial foundations have joined to slowly destroy the family unit. We could look at a servile public education system, for instance, and kindergarten programs, which render void the influence of parents over their children's learning and development. As Fabian and Frankfurt School member and eugenicist philosopher Bertrand Russell stated, educate children to believe snow is black. Influence of the home is obstructive, and not much can be done unless indoctrination begins before 10 years old. In addition to a servile and binding education system, we find government institutions like social working, counselors, and Planned Parenthood, which replace family guidance and support, making the state into the new family and authority over the child or adolescent. Though social work does have its good influences, especially in regards to abusive family situations, the institute in its roots has more to do with taking from the family than assisting it, from a macro perspective, that is. Though we understand at the micro level, with sincere and loving professionals, good work can be and often is accomplished. Though the most effective weapon in destruction of the family unit takes its place in entertainment, it plays on the carnal modes of youth and young adults, which are in their undeveloped stages. They are vulnerable and immature, easily influenced, emotional, and many times stubborn or overzealous. The worst part is many of these carnal modes don't fully mature or develop into the late 20s. And with the millennial generation, we will see this pushed back even into the 30s. Entertainment creates conflicting cultures, division, which disrupts communication and understanding. Today, worse than ever, we see the confusion of gender roles, degradation of parenthood, manhood, and womanhood, all promoted and learned through the conditioning of entertainment. This is how you create culture. If you want people to hate God, morality, and discipline, to be reckless, addicted to substances and unhealthy behaviors, to not trust people and be obsessed with themselves and create a world of foolish and selfish animals, well, put it in the music. Put it in the movies. Make it pretty. Make it sexy. Make it a victim fighting for justice. Make it everywhere and impossible to escape. As the family unit slowly evaporates, we lose our human ecosystem, which is the family. As an ecosystem, it raises us to learn how to be a human, a healthy, functioning individual and member of society. Within that ecosystem, we learn about the Most High God, obedience, righteousness, and faith in Christ. This is where we gain our moral fabric. This is how a healthy, balanced, and loving person is created. Though as society slowly is engineered to make the family unit vanish, with weaponized culture that proliferates divorce, drug use, mental, physical, and sexual abuse, poverty, homosexuality, and identity confusion. In turn, for lack of a family unit, people seek out a substitute. Lack of confidence in identity renders them a follower, a poser, an egomaniac, or bipolar and promiscuous. So they seek out a new family, which is found in groups, in new identities and archetypes, in social scenes, cults, or even gangs. Sometimes these groups are provided by the state, like masonry, fraternities, and the military. And most of the time, these groups are provided by the media and entertainment. Here we find lost individuals endorsing trends, genres, and styles. Though many join these groups to feel original or to show some type of expression, they in fact are carbon copies, limited to music, dress, and groupthink. In other words, culture creation. Right when you thought you were unique or accepted, and though you are essentially a corporate design, a think tank lab rat, a victim of herd behavior and crowd psychology. Bricks in the wall of the popular mind, divided in its designated areas with specific attributes, all in the guise of individuality and the feel of being rare. It is all very fascinating, yet somber. With all that being the case, it should come to no surprise when one discovers the music industry and entertainment agencies are directly connected to government intelligence and corporate interest groups. It's publicly documented that many leading Hollywood production companies are debriefed by the Pentagon and have CIA agents liaisons as part of production staff. Chase Brandon is a good example of one of these liaisons. Films and scripts cannot and will not be approved without proper intelligence management. Viacom, Time Warner, Sony Music Group, Universal Music Group, even Google, all CIA and Pentagon managed. Any source that reaches millions of people with messages gets controlled and compromised, period. From the CIA operative and Frankfurt School guru Theodore Adorno's handling of the Beatles, the beginning of the psychedelic drug culture through Agent Gordon Wasson with the infamous Time Life magazine cover story of 57, which is a Skull and Bones publication under Henry Luce, to Gloria Steinem, the openly admitted CIA operative who spearheaded the controlled feminist movement. Even the Pentagon's hand in productions of simple things like competition shows to breed division within society. Shows like Survivor, Hell's Kitchen, Cupcake Wars, Cutthroat Kitchen, and many, many others. Psychological warfare is usually very subtle and regularly functions without being detected. Jane Fonda, Jennifer Garland, Rachel Ray, all CIA operatives. Even Julia Childs was MI5, surprisingly enough. And these are all well-known facts in private investigation circles. They have all angles covered. Even where things can seem innocent, the elite have controlled it as well. Media as a whole is compromised. So once the family is no longer a source of identity and love, the media is provided as a new parent, a new guide and confidant. It will tell you what to wear, what to like, what to watch, and how to think. It will also provide many categories for every desire and interest group, so every individual can be accommodated. Now, with the addition of the internet, these categories run even deeper and broader and more confusing and addicting. And who partakes in more media and internet time than any demographic? The millennials. So we know millennials are an extremely unique and eccentric group in terms of thought and behavior, especially when comparing those thoughts and behaviors to past generations. In fact, millennials are at an advantage when one takes into consideration the advanced technology and access to information we have today. Unfortunately, the elite powers are keen to this idea, hence their labored and dedicated efforts at bombarding the media with garbage, making distracting and highly addictive technology, and most destructive of all, promoting the vitality of sex and pleasure as representations of the highest accomplishments in life. This generation is being taught to rebel and to do as thou wilt. The same old serpent lies, yet new and improved with billions of dollars behind them. Knowing that, it would be foolish to lump all millennials into, cultural categories. For now, we can focus on three major categories that seem to be trapping a very large percentage of the demographic, in turn arresting their development socially and mentally, but most important, spiritually. Before we get into these groups, let's remember they are not exclusive to millennials. Many of us Generation X kids are lumped in, and many Generation Z kids are being added to the list at an alarming rate at that. But let's continue. A simple way to frame these categories is by general features. So we have the largest group, which I call pop culture or grandpappy culture, the daddy of the generation. Or how Plato would state it, the legal guardian. Pop culture is described by the general feature of mainstream, the base programming of society. Here we find A-list Hollywood, major network TV, top 40, and hip-hop or electronic pop music. Fanboys and fangirls, twerkers and dabbers, Drake lemmings and Beyonce beehive or hive-minded minions. This category of culture creation is the corporate interest, prison industrial complex, and new left epicenter. Mind control at its highest level, basically. Here we find heavy drug promotion, lust programming, sexuality confusion and perversion, double-mindedness to the 10th degree, feminized male and warrior goddess programming, feminine dominance and male hatred, race baiting, endless consumption and little brain function, and hours and hours of application activity. Poor conversational skills, yet elaborate Snapchat stories and social media posts. This culture is represented by the talkers, not so much the doers, the followers, the greedy, the envious, and lustful. Sports fanatics, though sports in total are rigged, they seem to worship them. We find Spotify, iTunes, Instagram, promiscuity and emptiness, Netflix and chill, binge watching, which increases programming tenfold. This group runs on money, orgasms, cocaine, pot, and alcohol, and of course, pills. Next, we have the doers. Unlike the talkers or followers of pop culture, this culture actually gets out and does things, though they are just as deceived and spin their wheels in vain. This is the modern counterculture. Though it is wide in its range and has many subdivisions and offshoots, we will focus on the majority. One could look at this counterculture as being the hipsters. This category holds the grouping feature of rebellion. The so-called independent thinkers, the progressive and open-minded. Though a mind left open like a tin can is subject to be filled with trash and waste, hence the counterculture. Very opinionated, emotional, and self-righteous, this group leans on their libraries and education for confidence, or their favorite philosopher, historian, or existentialist thinker. They love Nietzsche, Locke, Descartes, Baldwin, Marx, and the like. Yet they are completely oblivious to the echo chamber they inhabit and the long and strategic methods employed by elite powers to rewrite history books and shape the opinions and imaginations of generations. This counterculture is surely the offspring of the original counterculture, the new left's brainchild, the authoritarian personality and critical theory of the modern era. Joseph Campbell, Timothy Leary, and Al Hubbard would be proud. They are part of the New Enlightenment, the ego and expression culture. Here we find the formers of social movements, Black consciousness organizations, social justice warriors, rabid feminists and gay rights activists out for blood, not equality, delusional animal rights activists and vegans, or test tube babies of the Club of Rome, UNESCO, and the World Wildlife Federation, New World Order proxy warriors. If you want to control the opposition, you become the opposition. Control the war by managing the conflict. Controlled education and controlled politics that they all seem to wholeheartedly fight over. Enlightened and lippy, yet their minds are filled with propaganda only. This is our second category plaguing the millennial generation. The hipster, pseudo-intellect info warriors in vintage clothing. Women with hairy armpits or shaved, it doesn't really matter. They both believe in abortion and fight for the women's right to murder innocent God-given life. And yet, love is all. Love is love. But is it really? I guess it depends on who you're talking to. Beta males and man bags, independent movies and Starbucks or Pete's Coffee if you're hardcore. I think you get the point. Let's not forget the techies and their startups, atheist belief systems and Babylonian lifestyles, more cocaine, more pot, and hallucinogens. Well, drugs are always a key feature in these countercultures and created cultures in general. It's somewhat of the fuel that moves the engine, if you will. Lastly, we have the emotionally and mentally disturbed subcultures. Yes, their severity ranges, but all individuals involved in these scenes or cults are to some degree emotionally imbalanced. The grouping feature of this culture is dysphoria. Here within the category, we find the presence of neurotic individuals, extreme narcissists, extreme introverts, extreme music, extreme everything. Within the subcultures, we find a high percentage of bipolar and mood disorders, personality disorders, grand delusion, and intense spiritual unrest or possession. Drugs are usually a part of these circles, though many times they are not, because the mere psychosis of some of these kids renders them in no need of sensory enhancement. Though energy drinks and high sugar products seem to have replaced water consumption, health is at the bottom of the priority list for these groups. It saddens me to witness the level of confusion and pain these kids go through, though I understand there's a war being waged against them. For the subculture group, it's being waged through the music and decadent satanic bands, brain-melting video game playing, fantasy media like anime, and medieval wizard and dragon lore. Here we find the outcasts, and what some would call weirdos or nerds, though now they have become freaks of nature, begging for attention and a place to call home. Descending from a mixture of metal and punk movements, new wave and Silicon Valley tech, this new subculture division of millennials is next level confusion, superior dissociation and groupthink, goth, emo, scene kids, club kids, weebos, ravers, and cosplay heads. The Aquarian age has truly been personified. As the most disturbing factor and revealing of the lost state we are in is the circle within this subculture called otherkin, the next step in identity psychology, where kids are now identifying as something other than human, like animals, plants, and even demonic creatures. And there is a huge movement for these otherkin millennials. These subcultures tend to have most activity and communion on Tumblr, the most depraved application in the MK Ultra tech program. Snapchat and Instagram are popular as well, and online gaming is also a haven for the subculture. This dysphoric millennial group is by far the most severely affected culture by MK Ultra mind control. By use of drugs, technology, and debasing music, these poor kids have completely lost their minds.
I think they can guess I'm a little bit different. Wearing a collar, a tail, my personal preference. So people don't want to be seen as any different. They want to fit in. But I've given up on fitting in. My name is Laura, and I believe that I am spiritually and mentally a wolf-dog hybrid. It's a very spiritual thing for me, so I am a wolf. To chew things if I'm stressed, but most of the time I'm pretty normal.
So from the millennial pop culture, counterculture, and subcultures, we can see the level of distraction and confusion that is being placed on the largest and most influential demographic in the nation. Strategic programs have been developed for these groups to submerge themselves in. Things like Vivo, Twitter, WorldStar, Vine, BET, and Snapchat have literally replaced reality with weaponized media. Yet we are taught these are signs of technological growth and social progress. If we only understood that mainstream music technology has been designed to create a debased culture. As Aldous Huxley stated, melodies ingrain themselves in the listener's mind. Setting information to melodies gives them power and programmability. People will adopt their behaviors from entertainment through learning. With the addition of fashion, you include the self-conscious factor, or ego recognition. This is why we see uniforms accompanying a type of music. This consolidates the culture, the thinking and perspective. Same brands, same fits, styles, trends, same slang terms. This is groupthink. And social media and hashtag technology has only increased the programming of this concept. They produce and sell image, the ultimate Bernaysian method of mind control. It's all about debasement. They can sell anything and create an entire culture from it. Drugs, violence, and blind arrogance, so they make drill music and trap artists available globally. Idolatry through celebritism or gods and goddess worship. They mix sex with music and drugs, and it becomes the new generation's milk. Just like the old sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the past, they roll out the same program. Just an upgraded version, MK Ultra 2.0. By now, regardless of which generation one falls under, none of us have been exempt from the perils of social engineering and culture creation. We can easily observe the steady growth and intensification in depravity, sexualization, and drug influence. Let's look at their use of celebrity or social demoralization. Boomers had names like Elvis, Generation X had Madonna, Millennials have Miley Cyrus, Rihanna, Nicki Minaj, and, well, the list goes on. See, by keeping a group in the flesh, or sexual base vibrations, they will operate with carnal needs. They will focus on pleasure, instant gratification, and animal instincts. This is why we see a steady increase in the sexual nature of media generation to generation, and to slowly normalize pedophilia and bestiality as well. Because this growth must appear natural and organic, so we are not able to notice the designed plots and manipulation. As Bertrand Russell stated, indoctrination must begin before 10 years old. So we observe the elite attacking early and designing multi-decade programs through celebritism for generations to grow with, follow, and transform as the celebrity transforms, all by design, with the root intentions of creating the ultimate double-minded, lawless, and debased culture possible. For example, they create young, lovable, innocent characters for children to idolize and revere. Then over time, they tweak the celebrity character in the direction of debasement. As the celebrity ages, they become more sexualized, as does the idolizing child grows older and in most cases begins to exhibit the same sexual behaviors, fully shaping the character and behavior of children as they grow into adulthood to fit and accept their twisted and debased form of culture. See, they understand the human nature of mimicry, so they exploit this nature to no end. Cross-ethnicity, class, cross-generational and geographical location, shaping the global mind. With the addition of drugs in these celebrities, they increase the culture's destabilization, dependence, and predictability. Now the youth will grow into more sexualized identities and begin to practice drug use or accept the use of drugs as normal since their favorite singer, actor, or artist did it. Now, all individuals do not fall into this psychological trap. We must be aware of this, though they tend to be the small minority, the insignificant in terms of rerouting the down spiral of the majority hive mind. From pot and LSD to heroin and cocaine to now all of the above, plus pills and hypnotic potions. Today we see that the hive mind is hitting a wall. Okay, so we can see the dynamics. The system has increased its level of Satanism generation to generation. More kink, more drugs, more violence, and identity confusion, sure. But I guess now the question would be, where do they get all these ideas and techniques from? How do they know so much about how we function, what makes us tick, and how to navigate these things down the path of their preconceived destruction of God's creation? It must have started somewhere. Well, though these ideas go all the way back to the garden and the tree of knowledge, we also see remnants in the Tower of Babel and efforts of Nimrod, in Plato, Nero, Machiavelli, Blavatsky, Bailey, and numerous others. These ideas are old, but where were they put together in a modern format? When was the American blueprint to these ideas organized? Where? And by whom? The American formation of a cornerstone mind control program started with the concept of cybernetics in 1941 at one specific group of private meetings in New York, the Macy Conferences. So what's the story with the Macy Foundation? We could begin with its fortune in oil and the shipping industry, then its Standard Oil buyout of the Rockefeller family. The Macy Foundation became a Rockefeller-financed Office of Strategic Services and CIA Mind Control Research Fund front organization. With the financing of this foundation, the birth of cybernetics and the future of all Project MKUltra programs became a reality. By gathering the most prolific and influential minds of hard sciences, or physical sciences, and soft sciences, or social sciences, the monostate culture evolution through biotech and social engineering was now appearing not only possible, but guaranteed in less time needed than expected. The Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation would be carried financially through the CIA to produce development, reproductive biology, family planning, or eugenics. This is the think tank that programs like Planned Parenthood and No Child Left Behind came from. The Macy Foundation also focused on grant making for medical research institutes and professional education, further building the social engineering and biological warfare spheres which comprise the elite matrix. To this very day, the Macy Foundation continues to thrive within the medical and technical development of society. The Macy conferences of the early 40s to the mid-50s formulated methods and models that have been implemented into all aspects of society: academia, military, medical, media and entertainment, politics and scientific research and development of every ilk. From cybernetics came the blueprint for transhumanism, the internet, mass psychology and mind control, predictive programming and media, false flag operations, color revolutions. The Macy conferences were a post-World War II mind control project, the coming together of physical and social sciences through the development of cybernetics, the beginning of the internet, and implications for the future of new systems of societal manipulation towards a controlled monostate. Though the foundation was CIA and Rockefeller funded, it is important to know it is solely a branch of the Tavistock Institute and SRI, the soft and hard scientific backbone of social engineering. Through research, we figured out that many MKUltra programs came directly from the studies done at the Macy conferences. And at the helm of MKUltra programming in America, we find the extensive work of British intelligence agent and scientist Gregory Bateson, one of the most influential members of the Macy conferences. The only other names that can come close to matching his influence is possibly Kurt Lewin and Bateson's mentor Aldous Huxley. Bateson contributed much to the success of MKUltra by his drug and patients experimentation at the Menlo Park Veterans Hospital, where another key figure in the project and promotion of LSD through his acid testing gang, the Merry Pranksters, Ken Kesey, was a test subject and volunteer for the MKUltra projects. He is also the author of the covert MKUltra novel, One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Though many universities were utilized in the development of MKUltra and cybernetics, the core schools were UC Berkeley, Stanford, and Harvard. The University of Santa Cruz was also another key institute. In fact, Gary Bateson was a professor there. Along with the director of research at Menlo Park, he also founded the Mind Control and Behavior Modification Lab in Palo Alto called the Mental Research Institute, or MRI. Here he ran clandestine MKUltra experiments with LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, and DMT. He gained funding through the CIA under the guise of schizophrenia studies in the family and parent-child dynamic research. These exact studies, in congruence with those of the Frankfurt School, were used to pinpoint specific features of dysfunction in the family and behavior, which would be promoted through drugs and media to produce similar effects within the society. This is why today we see drugs and alcohol or mood-enhancing substances so accepted, advertised, and second nature within our media sources. To go further, Bateson is also the root source of NLP, or Neuro-Linguistic Programming, another conditioning method of MKUltra, started by Bandler and Grinder, who are both students of Bateson. MLP can be viewed as the stepchild of the MKUltra human cybernetics programs, which come directly from the experiments held by Gregory Bateson. With the guidance of Aldous Huxley, funding and clearance of the CIA director Alan Dulles, it was made possible to create the drugged-up, technocratic smartphone monoculture we have today. Let's do a quick summary. After World War II came the merging of technology and human behavior, or cybernetics, through the Macy Conferences of New York. With the help of IBM, Henrik Hilmer's MKUltra projects of Germany, Project Paperclip, which brought those programs to US soil, and the creation of the television, along with the OSS broadcasting stations like NBC, ABC, and CBS. From this point forward, say in the late 50s, the elite had fully developed their arsenal to produce a true monostate. Though they weren't finished, they needed a connective form of technology to foment a type of web that could simultaneously monitor, educate, distract, and mold the society. Through the research and development of groups like SRI, who created the internet and actually designed Walt Disney's Disneyland, NASA, and the RAND Corporation, the personal computer was created and promoted through a cybernetic, developed, and drug-influenced counterculture, which was formed by drugs, of course, celebritism, and music, along with social propaganda to solidify an ideology and generation of people. A parallel example of this is our modern rave culture or music festivals. They come directly out of the same programs that were used to create festivals like Woodstock, for instance. So basically, yes, the computer, Silicon Valley, and the internet came directly out of the hippie movement, along with the military, LSD, rebellion, and hatred for the status quo. In other words, the personal computer and Silicon Valley in general was kind of a rebellious act created by the counterculture. If they only knew those behind the status quo were also behind the development of the counterculture, the internet, and the computer technology in general. Just a big cultural experiment in mind control which sparked a world-changing industry, all from cybernetics, and originating in the Macy conferences. Also were the WHO conferences, or World Health Organization, along with the Ratio Club. Both were cybernetic organizations that held similar conferences as the Macy's. So I wonder why we don't learn about these conferences in school history, or cybernetics in our science courses, or Gregory Bateson in social studies. We might read Aldous Huxley's Brave New World or Kesey's One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, yet never once do our teachers mention MKUltra or the role that these authors played in the programs. We never hear about Tavistock or names like Harold Amundsen, the U.S. psychiatrist who in 1953 proposed to the CIA a study investigating the possible military application of LSD, which pretty much kicked the whole project off from the very beginning. Funded and structured through the Macy Foundation. See, these are pieces of history that we mustn't ever know. Otherwise, we would wake up, stop buying their garbage, and playing their stupid games and programs, participating in their events and festivals. Instead, use their technology for finding truth, for deprogramming and figuring out what this wicked place is really about and has been since the very beginning.
I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
I'm sure you're wondering why Agent Kelly and the United States government would be so interested in what appears to be a record company. Well, I'm about to show you why. This is what our operation really does.
Blue is the new orange.
This is where it starts. The fads, the fashions, the product placement. From this command center, we control the most influential demographic of the entire population. We decide everything, from what clothes are in style to what slang is in vogue. Feather tank tops, matching pants, kind of a Buffy meets chicken run.
Feathers are the new rhinestones.
The new word for cool would be jerkin. As in, dude, that's jerkin. Ooh, that's dirty.
This is the epicenter of all trends. We turn your world into one giant TV commercial. But how, you may ask, can our operation be so effective? Sure, these kids have brains like Play-Doh just waiting to be molded into shape, but something else must be going on, right? The Chinese guy knows what I'm talking about. To answer some of your questions, we've produced a short educational film. Lights!
Hello, I'm Eugene Levy, and yes, I'm an actor. No, I said cappuccino. I'm here to talk to you about something very important. No, it's not about me or my career. I'm here to talk about subliminal messages in rock and roll music, or as it's simply known in some cultures, rock music. You see, for years, the government has been wisely coercing teenagers to buy products they normally wouldn't want just to get their money. Fact, kids don't have bills to pay. Fact, they don't pay taxes, but they do babysit and hold minimum wage jobs that earn them wads of cash as thick as, well, my body of work. But these kids today aren't dumb. They're not going to buy just anything. That's why the government has been planting small subliminal advertising suggestions in today's rock music. The results? We can now get these kids to buy just about anything. We can have them chasing a new trend every week. And that is good for the economy. And what's good for the economy is good for the country. So God bless the United States of America, the most ass-kicking country in the world.
But how can you control the rock bands? What if they find out about the hidden messages in their music?
Ever wonder why so many rock stars die in plane crashes? Overdose on drugs? We've been doing this a long time. If they start to get too curious, our options are endless. Bankruptcy, shocking scandals, religious conversions. We've created a highly rated TV show just to explain what happens to these people.
Now, we talk about truth hidden in plain sight quite often on this channel. And this right here is an example that could not be more plain, obnoxious even. Yet with all of its cheeky confessions, it still leaves out the meat of the matter, like the promotion of drug use, premature sexuality, and antisocial behavior that is conducive to the prison industrial complex, which is directly tied to the entertainment industry financially. But still, this clip does bleed some truths of mind control, and it is expected that those truths would be watered down and generic, so we just pick up the pieces and run with them. The Operation Compound displayed in this clip is somewhat of a campy analogy of what the CIA function is in regards to media entertainment, though it is rather accurate in its depiction of total social control. The acronym CIA is thrown around a lot, and many times its purpose is not understood. It is not a single acting and autonomous organization like, say, Google. The CIA, as in its name, is an agency, an operative group that is used as an object of change, control, and data collection for clients. This is usually accomplished through infiltration tactics. And the clients of the CIA, or the bodies that actually command it, are Wall Street and the City of London, or the Anglosphere, the Pentagon and MI6, and their constituent think tanks and NGOs, and of course Big Pharma and the narcotics market. These are the bodies that form the strings behind this big boogeyman group called Central Intelligence. It hardly exists in the way people imagine it, or how the media portrays it to be. It really has no power, and is almost an idle tool without its taskmasters. With this understanding, we can figure who is truly behind the guidance and manipulation of media and entertainment, instead of just relying on a quasi-omnipotent acronym. Know thy enemy, and be wise as serpents, yet gentle as doves.
Our undercover agents in Los Angeles were very cool about, and yet they did more in a very laid-back way. And it's never been as public as some of the other, you know, the buses running around the country.
Yeah, Huxley was one of the first.
After we were fired from Harvard, that fall, every major magazine came out with there was a cover story in the Saturday Evening Post. Dangerous. There were three different stories in Playboy. So that was it was the firing from Harvard, plus the fact that Henry Luce was somewhere always behind the scenes doing certain things. Plus, so many people have been involved in Los Angeles and so forth. But that was the first big part.
Tim was more responsible than anybody for that.
Wasn't it the calculated goal of IFF to cause that kind of spreading?
Yeah. Well, I want to point out, though, that the picture, we all know that here and now study pictures more than they do long columns. The particular picture, this article in Time Magazine attacking our research, had a scientific instrument called the experiential typewriter with all these dials, actually filled with socks, but that's all right. Had an incredibly beautiful young woman sitting, taking the test, and had standing behind her Alan Watts, a beautiful female Hindu guru named Gayatri Devi, and myself. Now, the signal content of a picture like that was much more important than the little words that were being written by some clerk at Time Magazine. Well, I'll say one of the goals was to make the American people smarter, raise their intelligence. And I think the American people today are quantum jumps more sophisticated in exactly the general directions in which we all hope they would become more sophisticated, about consciousness, about the nervous system, about the brain, about the options people have in creating their own reality, about self-actualization, self-indulgence, about pleasure being a self-reward as opposed to high reward. My God. Pleasure is now the #1 industry in this country. Recreational travel, entertainment, sensory indulgence. My God, so now, no question, that's our #1. Now, that was my goal.